Hi, I'm Mel,
And I'm Janelle.
and this is the Murder Mamas.
The Murder Mamas.
Welcome.
Welcome.
How are you?
Tired.
Yeah, you said that.
I'm very tired.
Very tired. This is going to be kind of a long one, so I don't know if it's going to be two-part. I think it might be two parts,
All
but
right.
we'll see. So you just want to dive in?
Let's go.
Okay. We are going to talk about Gary Michael Heidnik. He was born November in 1943. His father, Michael, worked as a machinist and also served as a city councilman. His mother, Ellen, was a beautician. The family lived in a quiet working-class suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, but things were far from perfect. When Gary was 2, his parents filed for divorce. It was not an amicable separation. Each of Gary's parents blamed the other for the split. Michael claimed that Ellen's alcoholism was the cause, while Ellen accused Michael of gross neglect of duty after the divorce. Gary and his younger brother, I don't know, I think he went to war and then came back and didn't do anything, is what I'm assuming.
Okay.
Like, he didn't do anything, like a part of the family. So, Gary and his younger brother, Terry, lived with their mother.
Oh, maybe like he wasn't an involved father post-divorce.
Right.
Is that what you're okay.
Yeah, I think so. Later, Terry would recall that at some point during these early years, Gary had a dangerous fall from a tree. He supposedly suffered a severe head injury that left his skull permanently deformed. Like, it was, it says children often teased him, calling him football head, because it was like a major fall.
How high up was he?
Like in a tree, I think. He like fell pretty far.
Like 20 feet?
I don't know, but it left a impact on his skull.
I fell like 15 feet on my face one time as a kid.
Wow. I rolled down the stairs when I was a baby and landed on my head on the tile floor. That's probably why I have some issues.
Yeah.
My skull's deformed too. But it was like a noticeable change in his head. Yeah. Okay. So that's like a big thing to think about in this story. So according to his brother, Gary's personality changed after the accident. In particular, he developed a cruel streak where once he enjoyed feeding wild animals that wandered onto the property, but after the accident, he began torturing them.
You know, I always struggle with this so much. Like, they were perfect until after this thing, and now they're not. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about, like, psychology and the human mind and, like, how that works. Right. But, like,
he's got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm assuming it was there before the head injury, and maybe it did change him a little bit, because it's weird. He's, like, the jobs that he wants and then the personality that he has don't mix. Like, I'll figure if that makes sense.
I mean, I'm sure it'll make sense.
It will make sense, yeah.
But, like, I don't know. It just seems so, like, this person was not a pedophile, and then they got in a car accident and had a traumatic brain injury, and now they're a pedophile. And I'm like, I'm not sure that, like...
Yeah, that
is a thing.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
I don't know. I think some head trauma do cause issues with people.
For sure.
But I don't know the extent or how hard they have to hit or what has to happen.
But, like, could make you a pedophile?
Yeah,
like,
I don't think... I would think it changes the brain chemistry to, like, make you meaner. Like, that, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, when people have had head... Then they're, like...
lose like that filter.
Yeah, they have no filter with people.
Kind of like the same thing with like people who age, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
As they age, they get meaner.
Yeah, I plan on doing that.
I'm sure you do. Okay,
it's my goal. So after the accident, he began torturing them. He would trap them, tie them up, and hang them from trees. He also started to get into more fights with Terry and other kids in the neighborhood.
How old is he?
This is like 10, maybe. Oh, God. Yeah, it's not good. It's very possible that the fall affected Gary for the rest of his life. Professor of clinical neurology Dr. Hugh Williams published a 2013 paper on such findings in the journal Lancet Psychiatry. He wrote that a traumatic head injury can disrupt development of the systems in the brain that control emotional regulation, which can in turn lead to impulsiveness and poor social judgment.
Okay, well, there's the answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get that. I can see that.
Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
His mother cared for him for a few years after his parents' divorce, but Ellen reportedly had difficulty controlling her heavy drinking, so after a few years, she returned the boys to their father. Unfortunately, this wasn't much of an improvement. Allegedly, Michael was a harsh disciplinarian who frequently beat his sons and kept them in line through humiliating punishments. So fucked up. The humiliation that he put them through is not okay. Like, the yelling and screaming and, like, spanking is one thing, but, like, humiliation with a child, like, that's a whole different level.
It's like we're writing a recipe on how to make a serial killer.
Pretty much, yeah. During sessions that he later had with psychologists, Gary said that when he wet his bed, his father made him hang the soiled sheets from his second-story bedroom window for all the neighbors to see.
What?
That's really bad. And, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, like, the memes where it's like, my kid did this thing, so I made them stand on a street corner wearing a shirt, like, to shame them? I'm like,
so many, you're going to be paying for lots of therapy.
No, they're not going to pay for shit. That kid's never going to speak to them again once they realize that they don't need that. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I read one thing that was like, you should be your kid's, like, biggest fan. Like,
yeah, of course.
Everyone deserves to have the biggest fan, and it should be their parents.
Their parents.
Like,
100%. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yep. Wow. And Terry also said that when Gary misbehaved, their father liked to paint a bullseye on the seat of their pants before sending them to school so that their classmates would kick them at some point.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
On all ends. Like,
he's an asshole.
Hey, I'm going to paint a target on your ass and then have people kick it?
Yeah.
And then also the kids kicking it. Like, what the fuck?
Michael remarried, but the children found little comfort in their new stepmother, Dorothea, according to Gary. She had no interest in parenting. In fact, Gary said she hated him and singled him out for more of Michael's punishments. Unsurprisingly, the abuse took its toll. Gary's life may have appeared normal to most outsiders. He was in the Boy Scouts, and he held a paper route like other kids, but some members of the community noticed that he seemed more withdrawn than his peers. One of his father's co-workers commented that Gary never seemed to go to dances or play sports. Like other boys, he was more of a loner as teenagers go. I guess not like other boys. Who's more of a loner.
Okay.
Terry and Gary even tried to run away to California, but they were caught by the police and sent back home. Sometime after this, Gary's father enrolled him in a school in Virginia, Stanton Military Academy. Gary attended Stanton for 2 years. He did pretty well. He made good grades and stayed out of trouble. But he left suddenly after his junior year, and I don't know why. For some reason, he went back to live with his father, and he enrolled at the local high school there.
Okay.
It's not clear why Gary left Stanton, but things didn't improve when he returned home. It's possible that around this time, Gary failed an entrance exam to West Point Academy, and he was just, like, giving up hope after that.
Okay.
Michael likely would have been furious at such an outcome, but his son had had enough at that point. Gary decided it was time to leave his father's house for good. He dropped out of high school in October of 1961, and he joined the Army at only 17 years old.
Yeah. Shocking.
Shocking.
Color me surprised.
Yeah.
A serial killer with a terrible upbringing.
And then going into the military.
Joining the military. Like, have you ever seen, like, there's the thing where it's like, here's a list of a bunch of serial killers and like their astrological sign, and it's all like Virgos and Geminis and like one other one, and it's like, I don't know, like
there might be something to this astrology.
If I'm in a dark alley and with a Gemini, like I'm just gonna be like, ooh.
It's true. Initially, Gary seemed to get along well with everyone. He was in training to become a medic. In May of 1962, he was assigned to the 46th Army Surgical Hospital in West Germany. He was there to provide medical support, but it wasn't long before Gary began to experience health problems of his own. So he was like trying to help people. In the beginning, he wanted to become a medic. Like that's what he wanted to do with his life. So, yeah, I don't know. Something changed. Gary claimed that while he was in Germany, the Army performed experiments on him using LSD and that he suffered a nervous breakdown as a result. There aren't any records of such testing in his file, but it was possible that Gary was right. The U.S. Army did conduct secret hallucinogenic drug research on American soldiers during the Cold War, most famously at the Edwood Arsenal in Maryland. And I have heard that before. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I mean, who knows? But I have heard that, like, they've done experimental drugs with people in war.
I don't know.
Or like, during the war.
What the point of giving someone like a hallucinogenic?
I don't know. I think that would be like scarier once you go out into war. Like,
I don't think it's for the soldiers. I think it's for like
like
the POW, like anyone we capture.
Oh,
like a truth serum type deal.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, but like,
that's weird.
I don't know. I always think of that scene. I can't remember what movie it's from, where it's like they're smoking weed with like testing.
Yeah.
It's like a military scene, like testing weed and its effects on people.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it's like Bill Hader's in it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Whatever the case, Gary went to visit a doctor. He was experiencing dizziness, headaches, blurred vision, and nausea. His doctor referred him to a neurologist who noted that he displayed signs of mental illness, possibly schizophrenia, or schizoid personality disorder. Okay. Which I had to look up schizoid personality disorder, and it just means that as you grow older, you grow apart from people and don't like hanging out with them. So I'm like, I have that. I do have that. Sounds familiar. Soon afterwards, 18-year-old Gary was transferred back to the United States. He was sent to a military hospital in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and treated for mental health problems.
Can you join the military before you turn 18?
No, but this was in the 60s, so I don't think it... Yeah.
You just fudge a record.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Call it a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, change a 1 to a 0 on a piece of paper.
And that's all you have to do. Yeah, because nothing's recorded by online or anything. So, yeah.
Like an electronic database.
Right. His doctors found that he was experiencing hallucinations on top of his other symptoms. Meanwhile, an Army board reviewed Gary's case and determined that he should be honorably discharged. With that, Gary's military career was over after serving just 14 months when he left the Army. Gary was issued a 100% disability rating, which meant he was entitled to the maximum amount in monthly benefits.
Nice.
Yeah. This is usually reserved for individuals who are virtually unemployable, which fucking sucks. I can't imagine. Like, fighting for your country and then coming back and not being able to do anything or function. Yeah. Okay, so even so, Gary did try to get work in February of 1964. He moved to Philadelphia, enrolled in a nursing school. He completed the program in a year and then spent some time working as a home care nurse. Between that and his income, his disability checks, he had saved enough money to purchase a house, but his mental health problems made it difficult to lead a normal life over the next few years. So, like, he was, it sounds like he was trying.
Really sad.
Yeah, like, he was suffering. He went and got help. He applied to become a nurse after, like, it's not, he doesn't sound like a bad guy. is what I'm saying now. But it's just weird. Gary attempted suicide several times. He tried everything, overdosing on tranquilizers, ingesting rat poison, and he even tried to drive his motorcycle straight into an oncoming truck.
I'm sorry, ingesting or injecting rat poison?
I said ingesting.
Okay. I'm not sure if I heard ingesting or injecting.
Maybe I probably said injecting.
How the hell do you inject rat poison? Okay.
I don't know. And drove a motorcycle. And, like, don't involve other people when you're doing that. Like, drive it into a wall, not another person's truck.
How about you seek help?
Well, yeah.
Don't drive.
Don't do it, but, like, don't involve other people. That's really fucked up, I think.
I think having someone else have to live with that knowledge that they caused you to die, like, regardless of what your intention was, is like awful. Same thing, like, you know, people don't talk about this, but like train conductors.
Oh God, yeah.
Like, there's like mental health problems in that field because people use the tracks.
Yeah, and that's fucked up for that person.
And then they have to deal with the consequences of that.
Yeah. Even though it was in no way controllable.
It's
fucked up. Sad. So he also tried more indirect methods. During one doctor's exam, the physician found a string wound tightly around his toe. Gary explained that he wanted to cause gangrene. Gangrene. He hoped it would spread and become fatal. Because of this erratic behavior, Gary spent the next several years in and out of psychiatric hospitals. He developed a number of idiosyncrasies, such as selective mutism. Sometimes he'd go weeks without speaking. During this period, Gary's younger brother lived in Philadelphia, and like Gary, Terry had also been discharged from the military due to mental illness. So I think it ran in the family. And like Gary, he was often frequently suicidal. The brothers leaned on each other for support, but they could be one another's worst enemy as well. And when things turned, it could get violent. In December of 1968, Gary and Terry got into a fight and raged. Gary smashed his brother's head with a wooden carpenter's tool, leaving a wound that needed 16 stitches.
Holy shit.
Yeah. When Terry was recovering in the hospital, Gary came to visit him. Terry bitterly rallied against Gary, accusing his brother of nearly killing him. Gary calmly responded that if he had killed Terry, he would have just bashed it in his head, and he would have placed the body in a bathtub and dissolved his bones in acid.
Seems like he's been thinking about this.
It's escalating. Like, first he wants to be a nurse, and now he's like, if I would have killed you, it would have been...
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you right now. You've said how you would kill and dispose of someone.
Yeah.
So, like...
But, like, I wouldn't... Not, like, my brother or my sister. Like, someone... If it's, like, someone killed my kid...
you don't have a brother or sister.
Stepbrother and stepsister. But, like, if someone murdered my child... Yes, I would want to hunt them down and kill them and get rid of the body. That's my job as a mother. That's how I feel.
Okay, Mel.
Inside thoughts.
Yes.
But despite Gary's threatening remarks, Terry decided to forgive him. By this stage, the brothers...
Did he kill his brother?
No.
Okay.
By this stage, the brothers had cut off contact with their father, and neither had spent time with their mother in years. All they had now was each other. Then tragedy hit. In 1970, their mother, Ellen, died by suicide. She'd been suffering from cancer and decided to end her life by drinking a bottle of muric chloride. Despite their estrangement, Gary saw to her cremation and spread her ashes in Niagara Falls. So he, like, did something good. After this, Gary fell into a depression. He went back into the hospital, this time for a lengthy stay. He seemed directionless with no plan for the future. In his file, one of his doctors wrote, "The patient seems to be settling in for life, but he was soon found to find a new purpose."
I feel like everything you're saying so far is like, it's really just highlighting like how nuanced life is.
Yeah.
You know, like having such a complicated relationship with his mom, but still showing up after she was dead.
Right.
Like, it's like those things, so much of that is like, it's not just black and white.
No.
You know, you can't be like, you were shitty to me. Like,
right. There's more. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
And I think that anyone should be able to, like, go non-contact, you know? Or, like...
For sure.
When someone died, like,
yeah.
you still have to do something about it, you know?
Yeah. And he did, and he stepped up. Not long after he was discharged in the spring of 1971, Gary left the house to get a cup of coffee and decided to just keep driving. He drove all the way to California, finally coming to a stop at the beach in Malibu. Then he heard a voice of God talking to him. The voice told him to start a church, one that catered towards people with intellectual disabilities. Gary didn't question it for a moment. He returned to Philadelphia and filed articles of incorporation for his church, which he called the United Church of the Ministers of God. He and Terry launched the new church in October of 1971. From then on, he went by his new title of Bishop Gary, now a religious leader.
Okay.
Gary found something he'd been lacking for most of his life, a feeling of control over others, and he found like he really liked it. It's possible that Gary had a genuine interest in helping people because of his past.
Yeah.
However, this new lease on life made some people who knew him suspicious. One friend initially assumed that it was some kind of scam or tax dodge. And to be fair, Gary did seem to have a particular interest in using the church to acquire wealth. Gary had always been fascinated by the stock market. He watched it obsessively, and in 1975, he used the church funds to open an account with Merrill Lynch. Gary proved to be an astute investor. Over time, his investments earned hundreds of thousands of dollars. The money technically belonged to the church, but Gary retained total control over it, so he did what he wanted with it.
Okay.
And I don't know how many people are actually going to this church by now. Like, I don't think there's, like, a shit ton of people. Like, it's his brother and him, and, like, maybe he's accumulated a few people, but I don't think there's a shit ton of people that attend this church. So the fact that he's just racking in the dough is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the side of Gary showed up in his dealings with a couple named Linda and Robert Rogers. They were Gary's tenants and rented the second floor of his house. The Rogers weren't sure what to make of their landlord. It seemed to Robert, who was black, that the now 32-year-old Gary was obsessed with race. He heard him make predictions that a race war would someday sweep the nation, and also saw him read racist literature from an Aryan organization.
Okay.
Robert found this strange, particularly because Gary, a white man, seemed to date black women almost exclusively. But Gary's odd attitudes on race weren't the only concern. At that time, Gary was living with a girlfriend named Dorothea May Knight. Dorothea was a black woman who, due to an intellectual disability, had spent much of her life in and out of care facilities. So this is like he's targeting people with mental disabilities, illness. Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, not disabilities.
Disabilities,
right.
yeah. That's fucked up.
That is very...
It's not okay. But he's pretty much schizophrenic, and he's got a schizoid personality as well, so...
So is he creating, like, a cult, or, like...
You'll see.
Oh, okay.
It seemed to Robert that Gary targeted Dorothy because of her disability. Dorothea, sorry. Troublingly, this isn't uncommon for predators. According to the Justice Department, people with intellectual disabilities become targets of sexual assault at rates more than 7 times higher than those without them. That's horrific.
Yeah.
Disability advocate Nancy Thaler says that these crimes, quote, are people who often cannot speak or their speech is not well developed because of the intellectual disability. People tend not to believe them, to think that they're not credible. And so for all these reasons, a perpetrator sees a safe opportunity to victimize people like Gary. Yeah.
It's really sad.
It's fucked up. In one of his many psychiatric reports compiled over the years of treatment, the doctor wrote that Gary was, quote, easily threatened by women whom he would consider to be equal to him, either intellectually or emotionally. Gary needs constant acceptance and self-assurance. But while Gary craved approval and respect, he wasn't capable of giving it to others. Dorothea seemed devoted to Gary, but he repaid her with cruelty. Linda Rogers said that Gary berated Dorothea, criticized her, beat her, and even deprived her of food. Linda and Robert tried to help, but they weren't sure how to protect her. So, like, they would try and give her food, but, like, they didn't want to, like, cross over Gary.
I hate this. I hate where this is going.
It's going. In the fall of 1976, Gary got into an argument with Linda. In retaliation, Gary decided to shut off all the utilities in the building.
The petty motherfucker.
Right? When Robert found out, he tried to get into the basement to turn the power back on, but found the door was locked. Fucking asshole.
Petty motherfucker. Right? I'm actually here for the pettiness. Just that one specific instance. Like, fuck you. You have no power.
Yep. Annoyed, Robert went outside and found a window leading to the cellar. He opened it and started to climb in. Once inside, he found himself face to face with Gary. He had been lying in wait for him. Armed with a rifle and a pistol, Gary told Robert that he was going to shoot him and tell the police he caught a burglar before Robert could retreat. Gary raised the pistol and fired the bullet and grazed Robert's cheekbone just below his left eye, but he was not seriously injured, and he got away.
That's
scary as fuck. I think we'll be moving out now.
Terrifying.
Right?
Like, wow. That's so terrifying.
Robert managed to talk Gary into letting him go. Then he reported the incident, but for some reason it was not listed in public records. The aggravated assault charges were dropped, and Gary never faced any consequences. So, like, the police dropped the ball. I don't know if they, like, wrote it down and then they lost it, or if they didn't actually take the report, or what the fuck happened.
Okay.
Shortly after this incident, Gary sold the house. When the new buyers took their first tour of the property, they were dismayed to find the place littered with garbage, pornography, and spent bullet casings. So I guess they didn't see it before they bought it. I don't know.
Okay. Or maybe, like, they took a tour with their realtor and then bought it anyway.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's pretty bad, though.
It's not a deal breaker.
Right.
It's picking up some
Just trash, yeah. But they found something...
Not like a paint color.
Yeah, that's true. But they found something...
Did you think I was serious?
What?
A paint color would never be a deal breaker.
No. Oh, no, I didn't. No, I thought you meant you can just paint. Yeah. No. I was reading the wrong way. Yeah. No. Paint is the easiest thing to fix.
I know, that was the joke I was making.
I don't know. It just went right over my head.
Way over your head.
Okay, but they found something even stranger in the basement, a large hole excavated in the concrete floor with a depth of about 3 feet. It was just large enough for a person to fit inside. They wondered what on earth Gary had intended to do with the hole, but since it was empty, the new owners decided to fill it in and forget about it. Once Gary sold his house, he moved in with another girlfriend. Davidson, like Dorothy and Ajette, was a black woman with an intellectual disability, and she was reportedly unable to read or write. This made her an easy target for Gary, who seemed to exercise control over her life.
So I want to theorize on his, like, profile of the women that he's targeting.
Yeah.
Do you think that he's targeting black women because he knows and or thinks that the police will not take them as seriously as they would a white woman? Like, so it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, because they have intellectual disabilities plus they're black. Yeah, I think so. It was an easy target for
It
him.
reminds me of, like, Dahmer, who lived in that specific area.
Yeah.
And, like, the police would not get involved.
Right.
Because it was,
like... It's a white dude.
Well, no, because it was, like, gay.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah,
and like, they were like, no,
yeah,
we don't know what to do with this.
Right.
Like...
Plus, he was a white man, too. I think that had a lot
And, like,
to do
it
with
creates, like, credibility in the eyes of the police. Just from a... Like, that's really...
Yeah.
That's very calculated to me.
Yeah, it is. Sometime in 1977, and Jeanette became pregnant. Gary refused to let her seek medical treatment for months until her family called the police to intervene when her older sister finally took her to a doctor a month before her due date. They learned that Dorothea had only gained 5 pounds during her pregnancy because Gary had put her on a strict diet.
Wait, those are 3 different names.
Dorothea?
Is her
Oh,
name?
and Jeanette. I'm sorry. Yeah. So...
You said Davidson, Anjanette, and Dorothea.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about?
And Jeanette,
Dorothea was the last girlfriend.
So Anjanette became pregnant. This is his new girlfriend. And, okay, yeah. She had only gained 5 pounds during her pregnancy, and that sucks. So despite Gary's destructive caregiving, Jeanette delivered a healthy baby girl in March of 1978. Authorities immediately placed the baby in foster care due to the mother's disability and Gary's history of mental illness. So I'm assuming she was pretty bad if they took the baby away from her. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she couldn't read or write.
Yeah. But Gary thought the baby belonged to him. He thought nobody had the right to take his family away after his baby was placed in foster care, and that really pissed him off.
That's like their number one right.
Right.
To determine whether or not it's safe.
Yeah, and he's not. So Gary began plotting another way to have children. In May, Gary and Anjanette drove to Salines Grove Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where Anjanette's sister Alberta was a resident. Alberta was a person with significant intellectual disabilities and wasn't capable of living on her own.
Okay.
So now we've got another one. Gary and Anjanette obtained a day pass to allow Alberta to leave the facility for a short family visit, but they never came back. By the following morning, officials at the center grew worried when Alberta still hadn't been found, and then a week had gone by, and they really got frantic. I don't know why it took them a week to get really frantic if a mentally disabled person goes missing. Like, hello? Well, they had a day pass, and they've been gone for a week.
It's the 70s.
Yeah.
There's the answer.
So they went looking for her at Gary's apartment in Philadelphia, hoping to find her safe. Gary answered the door. He told the center employees that he had given Alberta a bus ticket and sent her back to Harrisburg. Then he invited them to look around and prove that she wasn't there. The employees couldn't find her anywhere, but they still didn't believe Gary was telling the truth. So they decided to return to the apartment the following day, this time with the police, without him knowing that they were coming. When the authorities arrived, they searched the entire building. They even looked through the basement. When they got to an empty storage room in the back, they found Alberta trapped inside. She was shaking and in terror, and once she spotted her caregivers from the center, she rushed over to them and clung on to them, refusing to let them go. Doctors on the scene gave the terrified woman a physical examination and found clear evidence that she had been raped.
Oh.
Following the horrifying episode in June of 1978, 34-year-old Gary was arrested and charged with kidnapping, rape, false imprisonment, and unlawful restraint.
Ugh.
But Gary didn't spend the months leading up to court in jail. Instead, he was admitted for psychological treatment at the Veterans Hospital. And by the time he faced trial in November, many of the most serious charges had been dropped because Alberta was deemed not competent to testify against Gary. So they dropped the fucking charges. I'm sorry. Like, can we not do more? That's ridiculous. They found her in a room, locked, shaking, and had evidence of rape. Like, I'm sorry, she needs to testify? I don't think so. I think that's proof enough. Fucking,
Is this like... I'm so quiet because if I say anything, it's just going to turn into a rant.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I can do that right now.
Yeah.
I fucking hate this dude. And I hate that I felt, like, sad for him.
Right. Because he seemed like he was becoming a normal person.
In the beginning. I felt sad for him. And this feels so fucking awful.
Yeah. This is horrific. So prosecutors felt they couldn't prove the case without her testimony. Nevertheless, Judge Charles Murky found Gary guilty of 3 lesser of the charges: interference with custody of a committed person, recklessly endangering others, and false imprisonment. He was sentenced from 3 to 7 years in prison. But he also said that if it was in his power to sentence him to a longer prison term, he would have. So the judge was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I would have done it, like, you know. Gary was sentenced at the State Correctional Institution at Grateford, Pennsylvania. Around the same time, he was subject to a range of psychological testing and evaluations. Records showed that he was intelligent with an IQ of at least 130, close to genius level. But these records also indicated that he was highly manipulative, insecure, and confused.
Shocking.
Yeah, right. Dr. Wayne C. Blodgett was one of the psychiatrists who examined Gary just before his sentencing. He wrote that he considered Gary highly dangerous, stating that he had, quote, a high probability for serious or even bizarre offenses against a relatively helpless member of the community. So, like, I don't know. Take the doctor's advice. Like, if a doctor writes that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah.
So the doctor said he hoped that his report would raise a warning flag and force someone in the criminal justice system to pay special attention to Gary. However, that didn't happen, and Gary seemed to fly under the radar. Again. One prison official said that he was easy to overlook because he retreated into mutism for much of his sentence. For about 30 months, he rarely spoke to even the doctors sent to treat him. When the guards asked why he wouldn't talk, he scrawled out a note telling them that the devil had stuck a cookie down his throat.
Huh?
Yeah. That's why he didn't talk. Gary only began speaking again when officials told him they were terminating his parental rights to his daughter so his daughter could be officially adopted. Upset, he expressed a wish to visit her and provide support. Ultimately, his rights were terminated. Thank God they did that. At several points, he was sent to state hospitals for psychiatric treatment when prison officials worried about his danger that he posed to himself while in custody. He attempted suicide on several different occasions. Once he even smashed a light bulb and tried to eat the crushed glass in an effort to self-harm. Ultimately, Gary was released 3 years short of his full 7-year sentence. His parole was conditioned on him getting inpatient care at the VA hospital in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. But when he got there, his doctors didn't see any need to keep him for long. So he only stayed for 3 weeks. Are you fucking kidding me? By April 12th, 1983, he was out of the hospital and back in society, and he had no real friends or family to welcome him. His mother was dead, he wasn't on speaking terms with his father, and by that point, he and his brother Terry had drifted apart. After his release, he bought a home on North Marshall Street in Philadelphia. It's not clear whether he worked at this time or not, but he often told police he was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania because he liked the way that sounded.
Okay.
It's most likely that he was living off his disability benefits, though he still had access to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars from his investments through church. With this money, he purchased a Rolls Royce, a Cadillac, a Lincoln Continental, and other luxury vehicles.
Is he living in an apartment?
Yes. Or no, he's living in a small house.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, imagine rolling up to your apartment with a Rolls fucking Royce and just like...
He does live in a standalone house, but I don't think it's that big.
It's so funny.
Okay. He used the cars and the money to try to impress women who were usually individuals with intellectual disabilities. He'd drive to a fast food restaurant near the Elwyn Institute, a nonprofit servicing persons with various types of disabilities. Then Gary would hang around waiting for women from the institute to stop by the restaurant. Neighbors said they often saw Gary bringing women back to his house, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time for group sex. But these activities didn't satisfy all of Gary's desires. It seemed he still expressed an interest in fathering as many children as he could.
What?
Yeah. He viewed a family as another sign of power, like he did his cars, his stock accounts, and his bishop title.
Is he still doing the church thing?
Yeah, he still goes back to the church. I don't know how. Like, he's, like, in jail, and, like, the church is still registered. I don't know if people are, like, going to this church. I don't really know anything about that.
Okay.
But it's still there. Sociologist Konstantin Rothschild described how impregnating women is viewed as a status symbol in patriarchal environments. Patriarchal, yes.
I was like, patriarchal.
No, yeah. Patriarchal, yes. She wrote that for some men, fathering many children is a reassuring proof of their masculinity, potency, and fertility.
I was going to say, it's like some weird fucked up thing like, this is how fertile I am and how strong my sperm are.
Like, who gives a fuck? Gary...
Well, and also, like, you should not be...
No.
Procreating.
No.
Like, with your, like, the mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was managed appropriately, sure.
Right.
But, like, you're targeting people who can't advocate or speak up for themselves because...
You're doing it on purpose.
No one who could would want to be with you.
Right. Gary seemed obsessed with these kind of status symbols, and he looked for them everywhere. Not long after leaving prison, he began speaking with a young woman in the Philippines named Betty, who he met through a pen pal at Brookshaw. I think that was one of the hospitals he was staying in. Over the next 2 years, Gary courted, quote, Betty.
The quote.
Well, because, like, she's in the Philippines, so I don't know. He courted Betty.
It's going to be like Betty. A 90-day fiancé situation?
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
By mail and occasionally by telephone.
Ooh.
Yeah. He told her he was a clergyman looking for a wife. He seemed ideal to Betty. And in September of 1985...
If only she knew what she was getting into.
She received a visa and flew to the United States. She and Gary married 3 days after her arrival. But almost immediately... 3 days?
She ain't wasting no time.
No time. But almost immediately, Betty found herself living in a nightmare. A week into her marriage, she caught Gary having sex with 3 women he brought back to their home. He told her that this was how marriages work in America.
Yeah. Was he an attractive man?
No. I mean, he wasn't, like, unattractive, but he wasn't...
He was just, like, a normal like,
dude.
regular dude.
Yeah.
So how was he getting all these women?
Well, this was someone in the Philippines. That
No, but, like, the other one.
Well, they're all mentally...
Oh, all of them?
Yes.
Wait, but, like, where is he finding them?
Well, he would stay outside the mental hospital, and then they would come into the fast food place to eat, and he would ask them to come home with them.
Did you say that?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That was one of the time, but he would go out patrolling for them, or trolling for them, too, and just, have them get in his car by offering them food or, $20, and then he'd take them back to his house.
Okay.
Yeah. So... Yeah.
I don't know if you want to cut this, but imagine moving here from the Philippines and then your husband is just boinking.
Yep.
This
is how we do it in America.
Yep. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He explained that he was always going to sleep with other women, but she should consider herself lucky since he had chosen to marry her. But Betty objected to that. He punched her and forced her to stand in the corner for 14 hours. For the next few months, Betty endured Gary's horrific treatment.
14 hours?
14 hours.
Sounds like he's taking his dad's punishment
to
the next level.
He beat her, raped her, forced her to sleep on the dirty floor, deprived her of food, and mocked her. She watched him have sex with other women. Then Betty discovered she was pregnant. At this point, she realized she couldn't bear Gary's abuse anymore. In mid-January of 1986, Betty placed her passport and a change of clothes in a bag and hid it behind some bushes in front of their house. A little later, she told Gary she was going shopping. Instead, she grabbed the bag and escaped to a woman's shelter. 2 weeks after her escape, Betty obtained a protection order which barred Gary, now 42, from physically striking, harassing, or threatening her in any way. In her petition, she stated that by calling himself a bishop, Gary used his position of authority to seduce women. Betty also reported Gary to the police, so the Philadelphia District's Attorney Office got involved and charged Gary with spousal rape, indecent assault, and simple assault, but on the day of the preliminary hearing, Betty never showed up. Without her testimony, the charges against Gary were dropped. In September of 1986, Betty gave birth to a son, and understandably, she didn't want Gary anywhere near them. Once again, Gary had felt that he had been denied his right to a family. He became more determined to take whatever means necessary to get one. On the night of November 26, 1986, a 25-year-old sex worker named Josephine Riviera stood on a corner the northeast corner, scouting out potential customers. A gleaming white Cadillac pulled up beside her, and Gary Heidnik was behind the wheel. And that's where we're going to stop today.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at
The Murder Mamas,
Facebook,
The M Mamas,
Twitter,
The Murder Mamas,
email,
themurdermamas@gmail.com.
And if you like us and are happy with our content, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We would appreciate it. Bye. Bye.